Good morning, everyone. This is a CABI presentation. I'm CABI Vice President Paul Chambliss. I'm a broker at Front Range Business Incorporated. Today, we're pleased to have a friend of CABI, Andy Jones, President and founder of PrivateEquityInfo.com. And he's going to talk to us about research on his database and give us some industry overview. So take it away, Andy.
All right, thanks, Paul, and thanks for organizing this, and thank you everybody for taking time out of your day to drop in and listen. What I'd like to do is share my screen. I have a bit of a PowerPoint presentation, a few slides, then we'll jump over and just go straight into a demo of Private Equity Info. So with that, let me go ahead and share my screen. And Paul, you can let me know when you can see the screen.
Yep, you're up. Looks good.
Excellent. Okay, so Private Equity Info is an M&A research database. Primarily for you guys, you'll use it to search the private equity firms to find the best or most likely buyers or investors in your clients' companies. And so what I'd like to do is just to structure the talk today. It won't be terribly long, but I had some thoughts. I just wanted to make some introductory comments, go over some overview thoughts. I wanted to take a moment and just talk to you about what we're seeing in the industry just as of recent, because I think it'll be interesting to you, just touch on a few things, talk to you about how to log in, and then we'll go into a demo. And in the demo, I'm happy to demo a prepared demo, but also I want you guys to be thinking of, if you're working on a particular pitch, or if you have an active client that you'd like me to search live, we can also do that, and maybe you can take away something with that as well. So with that, let me drop into the demo. Actually, one of the things I've learned is if you don't tell a story, nobody ever remembers what you talked about. So I have a quick story for you guys. It's a little bit of a tangent, but it has to do with this idea that, everyone says you can learn pretty much on YouTube. And I'm hoping that you can learn a lot with Private Equity Info as well for your professional lives. But I was playing soccer last week, and someone kicked the ball and it hit me right square in the jaw. I mean, it really smarted, and I kind of stumbled around for a few seconds. And well, then I noticed that something wasn't right with my jaw. It was off somehow. And I played another, 30 minutes or so. And finally I had to quit because it was swelling up and something wasn't right. And so I came home and I did some reading online, and I determined it wasn't broken, but it was dislocated because it was out and shifted left, and it just wasn't right, and I couldn't chew. So I thought, oh goodness, what am I going to do? I guess I'll go to YouTube videos and watch, what's the doctor going to do to me? And so I watched the videos of how doctors, set a dislocated jaw, and I thought, well, except for the anesthesia, that doesn't look so hard. So I went ahead and just followed the instructions and grabbed my teeth and pulled it down and pushed it back, and it clicked right into place. And a week later, here I am, and good as new. So that's my story for you. That's the story, so you'll remember what we talked about. But it illustrates that you can learn pretty much anything on YouTube, and hopefully you can learn some stuff from PEI. So with that, let's jump into the research database. We allow you to quickly, find the right buyers for your clients' companies, and perhaps one of the most important points for you guys is that this is CABI sponsored, which means it's free to you, right? So you have access to this database and you can use it, and your login, if you haven't used it before, I hope you have, but if you haven't, your credentials are already set up in our system, and I'll tell you at the login section on how to get in. Real quick, here's just a bunch of numbers we throw at you to say that we have a lot of data. We have a whole lot of data. We're tracking 27 million data points, and of particular interest is 96,000 portfolio companies. These are the various data modules that we track. There's 10 of them. You guys have access with your subscription to the first 7. But I think of most interest would be the data module at the top, the private equity firms. A quick point on data quality. This is a proprietary database to us. We're finishing our 16th year in business. So we've been around a while. We continuously update it with our internal research team. We're absolutely fanatical about our data quality. In fact, I'm pretty sure we overspend there, but we want to make sure it's right. I won't get into the statistics, but we track the average aging of all the data and all the various tables, and generally speaking, well, let me just not go into the details there, but just to say that I think you'll be really surprised, pleasantly surprised, that our data quality is just fantastic. Once you log in, I just wanted to point out, we have some demo videos. In the footer of every page of our website, there's a link called videos. And in those, on that page, there are, I think, 8 demo videos. They're literally all 1 minute long or less, because we don't want to waste your time. So if you watch 4 or 5 of these, you'll be able to ramp up real quickly on our service as well if you forget something that I've mentioned during this demo. So let's talk about a few industry trends, kind of just the pulse of what we're seeing here. As everyone knows, COVID came along and deal flow basically paused. That was the word on the lips of every private equity firm. It's like, we're just kind of letting the dust settle and see what's going on. But recently, and Paul and I were talking just before this call, and it seems like this mirrors his firm, say in the last 6 to 8 weeks, we've noticed significant amount of pickup in deal flow, both for private equity firms closing deals, platform acquisitions, add-on acquisitions, and in our, primarily our customers, our middle market investment bankers, and they're also telling us they're going to have either years, this year will be on par with prior years, and a few firms have even said they're having record years this year. So a lot of the deals that are closing now have to do with the ones that went on pause early in the year, sort of resurfacing and coming to life. And for whatever reason, just the deal flow is just really picking up. So I hope that you guys are seeing that in your firms as well. Also, just this a little bit of ancillary point here, but we've noticed an increased interest in the ESOPs. Some of the firms out there, I don't want to say they focus exclusively on ESOPs, but they have a focus on that, and they're having their best years ever. And I'm not exactly sure why that is. We can theorize, and you guys surely have some reasons too, but that's just a point I wanted to bring up. We're seeing that. Portfolio company holding periods are increasing. One of the things that we have the ability to track here is, what is the median time that portfolio companies are held by private equity firms over time? So every time there's an exit, there's a certain duration that portfolio company has been held. And we've been tracking that every 6 months or so, and that's what it looks like here. Paul, just so I'm clear here, the video that I have on my screen here, is that in your way, or do you not see that? Are you able to see the whole graph?
See the whole graph, yes.
Great.
The entire graph, yes.
So this is a graph that shows the holding period, the median holding period for portfolio companies based on the year they are exited. And you can see here there was a low, a bit of a low around 2007, 2008. Well, that's when the market was super hot, right before the last recession. And consequently, the private equity firms did not need to hold their portfolio companies that long before they realized a substantial return on investment. So we had a quite short holding period. And if you look at 2008 through about 2014, maybe pushing 2015, the holding periods increased substantially up to, I think, about 5.6 years. Well, the reason for that is some private equity firms bought portfolio companies in 2007 and 2008 at the peak of the last recession, and they had to hold them longer, right? Because it took a while to climb out of that. That was probably unfortunate timing for them. And then it kind of declined around 2015, 2016, and just pretty much held steady, a very slow, steady decline down into like the 4.8, 4.9 year range. And just this last data point for 2020 that I just put up there, it's starting to tick back up. And that is a COVID effect. That is, well, a lot of companies took a hit. And so those companies that took a hit that were in the portfolio of private equity firms, they just didn't exit. And so, I think what we will see is that number continue to climb for at least a year or two more. So anyway, that's just kind of interesting to see how the holding periods track the overall global or macroeconomic events around the US and the world, frankly. Oops. Just recently, I won't hit all of these, but we go through every month and we look at the platform acquisitions the private equity firms have made, and we say, well, kind of, if we were to group them into some sectors that seem like they're kind of grouping around these little areas, this is what we see. Interestingly enough, in October, we saw some manufacturing deals being done, and we haven't seen that as much during 2020, but we're starting to see it, particularly food and industrial products. Of course, software, that's always a recurring theme because, well, it's scalable and it's not as affected by COVID. You can see in September, healthcare, industrial service, SaaS, and then in August, those ones. I wanted to take one of these and show you another thing that we can look at. And I'm going to look at software as a service there in September and just show you what that has trended over time. So if you take a look at, this is like from 1990 to 2020, this would be the percentage of deals that are done by private equity firms that are SaaS-based deals. Well, there weren't any until really 2007, 2008, because no one said software as a service back then, right? That wasn't even a phrase people used. I mean, it would be ridiculous to see something in the 90s, unless it was like a mainframe or something, I don't know. But you can see it really took off, and then in 2018, 2019, 2020, look at that, it just really went up to the extent that it's, for such a niche, it's about 4% of all the deals the PE firms are doing. So anyway, I thought you would find that interesting. Just some tidbits of data and ancillary notes from us about what we're hearing about the industry. With that, I want to, before we do the demo, make sure that you guys know how to log in. In fact, you can even hit print screen on this if you want. But if you go to private equity info and log in, you'll use your email address that you use for CABI and your password. If you don't know your password, just click the forgot password link and go ahead and reset it from that. If you have any troubles at all, either call me or email me and we'll get you sorted out and set up and off and running in just a minute or two. Okay, with that, are there any questions about what I've talked about so far, or should I just hop into the demo?
Andy, I don't see any questions on chat. Any of our participants have any questions that they'd like to present right now? No. In fact, yeah, if anyone has a particular use case that they're working on right now, we'd love to go through that. Otherwise, I think Andy's just going to dive in and go through the website with us.
Yeah, so be thinking about that. I'm happy to make this a productivity session as well for at least somebody. So can you see the website now?
We can see the website. Yeah, it fills the screen.
Great. So I'm on private equity info right now. I'm logged in already. And what I want to do is just go to search database. And the data modules that I mentioned before are on the left-hand menu. So I'm just going to orient you a little bit as to what you're looking at, and then we'll go into a demo. Within the private equity data module, which is where we're going to spend our time today, there are 3 tabs. You can search the private equity firms, you can search the portfolio companies, and you can search the key executives working at the private equity firms. Okay, so it begins with just an alphabetical list of firms. You can click on any one of these rows and it will accordion down and show you the details about that specific firm, right? So you have their contact information, you have their acquisition criteria, and I do want to note that the acquisition criteria metrics you see here for the firms are for platform acquisitions. For add-on acquisitions, as you know, it could be any size. It's more about fit. We have general comments about the firm. We try to be very succinct and bulleted, especially in our targeted sectors, so you don't have to spend time reading paragraphs of stuff. And the type of transactions that they do at the bottom. You can also look at their portfolio companies, in this case, 3, both current and prior. If you were to click on any one of these, it just pops up a window showing you the details about that particular portfolio company, the website, some transaction details, the fact that it's current and was purchased in April 2019. So that's the orientation. You can filter by those firms that do mid-sized deals or small deals. And in fact, there's an advanced filter here that will allow you to filter by revenue, EBITDA, or enterprise value. So maybe you say, well, who does deals enterprise value, as low as like 15 million? And we're at 287 firms. Okay.
Andy, there is a request
Yeah.
out there if you want to go to that, or if you want to wait till we get through the rest of the tabs.
Well, lob it to me and we'll see. I may defer on it or we may tackle it. What's the
Okay.
request?
Ron Chernak has a case for us. Ron, you want to unmute and present that to Andy?
I am already unmuted. So Andy, thanks for being here. So I have one of those problem childs that's been with me for a while. It is a company that's a service provider of engineered electronic services. And they primarily provide consulting functions for municipalities. And those consulting functions revolve around security and more recently doing video conferencing within these various municipalities. They service along the Front Range. Client is retiring in round numbers about $1.6 million or so of revenue with an SDE of about 300,000.
Okay.
So we think this certainly could be an add-on for a company looking to expand into the growing Front Range.
So Andy, just for your information, when Ron talks about the Front Range, it's a region in Colorado where most of the population lives.
Yeah, I understood that.
Fort
Yeah.
Collins and say Pueblo.
Right. Thank you for clarifying though, because you never know, right?
Yep.
I just got a notification that my internet is unstable. Are you still seeing the screen fine?
Still
Yes.
see the screen.
Okay, cool. Let me come back to that. Let me orient people a little bit more to the tabs, and then we'll do that as a case study.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
And I told Paul before the call, inevitably when I ask people to do case studies, people give me their problem childs to work on. So it's the reason why some deals are problematic is because they're hard, and we'll see what we come up with. All right, so when I was working as an investment banker, the way I would approach a deal, either for a pitch or for a client that's already engaged, to sort of think about the marketing program as sort of an A list, a B list, a C list, right? Your A list are those targeted firms that are either private equity or strategics that are just dead on. There's 15 of them or 10 of them or 8 or maybe even 2. They're just spot on exactly, like they will almost certainly be interested in taking your call about this client because it just fits them perfectly. B list is, well, for private equity firms, it falls within their stated area of interest by way of size, by way of industry, geography, etc. But maybe they don't already have a portfolio company that looks like that. So the A list, they probably already have a portfolio company that looks much like your client as a platform. B list is, well, it fits their criteria, but maybe they haven't fully gone there yet. And C list is, well, you guys know what C list is. It's everything else you could possibly think of that might work. But the way I would do an A list is I would find those private equity firms that already own a portfolio company that looks a lot like my client, right? Because that is the single best gauge of their appetite and interest in a particular industry, is that they've already put their money there, right? Unless they've been burned, in which case, you'll hear about that too. But yeah, that's the best indication. Let me do a canned example real quick just to orient you. Let's say I'm working on a deal and I'm selling a medical device company. And so I've already got that typed in here. So right now I'm searching the portfolio company business descriptions that are owned by private equity firms. I've limited it to North America, all dates. But I could just as well include exited investments, but these are all current investments. You can see I have 205 results. On the left-hand side, we see the name of the portfolio company. In the middle, we see a business description of the portfolio company. On the right-hand side, we see the private equity owner of that portfolio company. And so if you were to click on any one of these, again, it accordions down, you can see the complete details about this particular portfolio company, the company name. This one's got quite the long list of transaction details because they've done some add-on acquisitions, it looks like, and a business description. If you said, well, that makes sense, right? This is a good hit for me. I might want to take a look at Vance Street Capital. So sort of the orange side is about the portfolio company. The blue side is about the private equity firm. All right, so I can take a look at the private equity firm, and then we're back to the details you saw before, right? Their acquisition criteria, the general comments. We can look at the rest of their portfolio, again, current or prior. And again, we can pop open any one of these to see the details behind it. And then we can look at the key executives at that private equity firm. And again, all of these accordion down as well. And so you have name, title, email, and bio. Okay. So the idea is you want, ideally, a lot of times in their bios, it'll say who holds the board seats, like in this case. And so we would be looking for the key executive that sits on the board of A&E Medical Corporation. And that way we know we're contacting the right person at the right firm, because as you guys have surely found out as well, that if you contact the wrong person at the right firm, you sometimes get the wrong answer. So when you can, try to find the person who holds the board seat for the portfolio company that's of interest.
Andy, a quick question that might be pertinent. Lynn wants to know if it's best to pitch the acquisition to the operating unit or the parent PE group when you're searching for an executive.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would almost always say you pitch to the private equity group that's owning the portfolio company. And the reason is the operating partner, like the CEO of the portfolio company, you know, that person's trying to run their business and they have 1,000 things to do. And you're another person pinging them for their attention. They may or may not have it front and center of their mind to grow through acquisitions. They just got bought out by a private equity firm 6 to 8 months ago. They're trying to figure out, you know, learn the ropes there, and a lot of things to do. You come along with a potential add-on, it may not be top of mind. If you approach the private equity firm and you get the right executive there who holds the board seat, and you approach them with that idea, well, oftentimes, you know, they will have a build and buy strategy and they will look at it. And if they are interested, they will pass it to the CEO and say, hey, take a look at this. Well, when the guy who owns your company tells you to take a look at something, then you probably do, right? So that's the rationale there. I would always go to the PE firm first.
Okay, thanks, Andy.
Okay. Yeah. So the idea here is that you would do your search for your A list, searching the portfolio companies. And a couple of tips: as you're searching, you probably will come across keywords and phrases that, oh, that's a good hit. Like this one, for example, maybe I said medical devices, but maybe I was really interested in imaging technology specifically. Well, I can just copy and paste this into my next search item, right? And that's a good way to sort of spider out your search to make sure you get all the nooks and crannies of the database of things that are interesting to you. One more tip before we move on. When you're formulating your keywords and phrases, it is best, to the extent that you are fairly specific and you don't choose large industry words like manufacturing or healthcare or technology, because you'll just get thousands and thousands of results, right? You just don't want that. So rather than say manufacturing, maybe you could say plastics. But maybe then rather than saying plastics, you could say plastic injection molding, right? Now that's going to be a good, solid, targeted hit. So that's tip number one, is be fairly specific. When you're searching almost 96,000 companies, you can be specific and get still some good results. The other point I wanted to make is when you are choosing your keywords and phrases, try to leave off the suffixes. So notice that I didn't say medical devices. I left off the S because that way I'll get the occurrence of medical device and medical devices. All right. So same thing with manufacturing. You can leave off the ing. So you'll get manufacturers, manufactured, manufacturer, and all the variations of the root word. Okay, so there's that. So step one, search portfolio companies, find your A list. Step two, come over to the private equity firms, do a very similar search to start with. Find your B list, right? So these guys have said, for whatever reason, that they do have an interest in medical devices. And by the way, your searches, if you haven't noticed, are highlighted in yellow, so your eyes can focus in on that real quickly. And then you can look at the acquisition criteria. You can look at the rest of their portfolio and decide if that makes sense to add them to your B list. So that's the orientation to our website. I know it's like a whirlwind kind of tour, but generally speaking, the user interface is pretty easy to use. So I think you guys are very capable and will be able to explore the bells and whistles on your own. I will come back to the case study though. Okay, so if I remember correctly, this keywords and phrases I might choose here would be, it was consulting with sort of a, wasn't electronics necessarily, it was more
Ron, can
like,
we get a refresh on that?
yeah.
Absolutely. They provide engineered electronic systems for security and video conferencing purposes. So they're more consultants.
The consultants, but let me just go with security system as a starting point, and we'll probe around that. That still gives us quite a few results, 121. So I'm going to also do consult just to see. That may be nothing, but okay. So now we have 8 portfolio companies that at least contain those 3 words, not necessarily next to each other. I'll scroll down a little bit. Does anything grab your attention? This might actually be a decent hit right here.
Well, I'm looking at that one, Andy, and I'm thinking when you're talking about IT services, that's cybersecurity and a lot of other outliers. So I'm not sure that focuses in.
Okay. This is more fire code.
The top one is somewhat in there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this is not an easy one, I'll admit. But if I were doing this search in your shoes, I would choose these keywords and phrases like security and system, or maybe even electronics, consulting, 3 or 4 different variety of phrases, and then look at the portfolio companies, like I said before, and pick off additional keywords and phrases out of the ones that are somewhat interesting to you, and use those as your next search to spider through. I'll go ahead and expand this one down. So these guys have done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 add-on acquisitions. That's always interesting to see as well. Given that this particular portfolio company is owned by Warburg Pincus, your deal might be on the small side for something that Warburg Pincus would spend time on. So that might be something that I would be reluctant to pursue with these guys, just because, I know the deal sizes these guys work on. Do you see anything else here that you want me to expand down?
Let's see here. How about core BTS?
So they're owned by Tailwind Capital.
Also New York.
Yes. Now, keep in mind, like I said before, these acquisition criteria are for platforms.
Platform. Yep.
So, add-ons it's worth contacting them.
Mm-hmm.
And you can take the time on your own to go through the whole list of things here, but they're into data information services, I see. So yeah, so the key there is really finding the right person. One of the things that I do is I'll expand all of the bios on the executives. Then I'll use the Control F on my keyboard, which just brings up the find command. And I'll type in the portfolio company name. And sometimes we'll just pop and see that. I don't see it in their bios. So that would be the way to quickly find the right executive. If they had the portfolio company name in their bios, you could just do the Control F, find it that way.
Okay.
But in this case, I don't see it, unfortunately. Well, look, I'm happy to, if you want to call me offline as well.
Okay, I'll play around with it a little bit more.
Yeah, play with it. And if you get stuck, give me a call.
Okay, thank you.
Andy, we've got another use case. It's in the hospitality industry, and I'm just curious, do you have much activity in the hospitality industry?
It depends on what type of hospitality you're referring to. It's pretty broad.
It's a tour company looking to expand, looking to make acquisitions.
Touring, like taking people around.
Merle, this is from Merle Northrop. Merle, do you have any additional information on that?
Yes, it is a tour company that picks up tourists at hotels and goes out for one-day tour, multi-day tour, mostly in the southwest of the United States, centered out of Phoenix and Las Vegas. Small tours, not big tour buses, but the 13 passenger vehicles, private tours as well that the company might make up. So.
And Merle, you had an additional question about what's the best way to communicate? Email, phone call, letter? Andy?
Okay, let me get to that one in a second. Let me stick with touring for a moment.
Okay.
Maybe I'm struggling with this one too. Let's try. Let me like guided tours or
with a private touring with a private driver.
Right. So again, you'll have to peck around your own, but I would choose words like guided tour or tour guide. You could even do maybe even like chartered bus kind of things. That's a little bit tangential, but it's related. But like this one, these guys are in Florida, but they do guided tours in the Everglades. So it's not in Colorado.
Right.
But it's something similar. And then they're owned by this private equity firm. And again, you can look at their details.
I've looked at that one.
Have you?
Yeah, like Andy's mentioned previously, even if this is not a good portfolio company or private equity group to contact, the industry buzzwords are very, very useful. And you can find out what's important to people in these industries and do your searches based on those words and come up with other firms.
I also would suggest that you guys periodically dip into our blog. I'm going to detour a little bit here. We produce a lot of industry reports on the blog and graphs and charts about what's happening in the industry, usually about 2 to 3 a month. So, it keeps you on top of what's going on in the M&A space and what people are interested in, what deals are happening. So be sure to visit that as well. What's the best way to reach out to the private equity firms was the question. Is that right, Paul?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, so the expectation is really to send an email. And I would, if you don't hear back within 24 hours, I would certainly follow up with a phone call. Those guys are pretty busy. They travel a lot. Well, maybe they travel less right now, but normally they travel a lot. they're looking for deals, they're working on deals, they're trying to close deals, they're trying to exit, and meanwhile they're trying to grow the companies that they already own. It's a lot, and so sometimes you do need to reach out with an additional phone call. Like I said before, the best person to contact is the guy who holds the seat on the board, but second best person is the business development person for that firm. Not every private equity firm has someone in that role, but when they do, that's always a good place to start. I would send them the executive summary and an NDA together and send them a quick email. Now, where you're going to get their attention, and it differentiates you from all the other emails they get, is that when you've done your research on private equity info and you found portfolio companies that they own that look similar to your client, lead with that. Lead with that sentence in your email that says, I noticed you have ABC widgets in your portfolio company. I currently represent a client who's looking to exit or raise capital, whatever it is, that's very similar in industry and size and whatever you want to say. Well, they're way more interested in opening that email and getting back to you than the one that says, hey, check this out. So to the extent that you show that you did the research and that you're contacting them for a targeted purpose, you'll get a better response.
All right, Andy, another question from Scott Evans. Are there any NAICS or SIC codes for any of these records?
There are not. We elected not to do the NAICS and SIC codes primarily because, well, they're a bit antiquated in that sometimes there are companies that exist for which there is no code. Especially some of the SaaS kind of companies, there just may not be a good code for it. And so we elected just to go with the keywords. So you can replicate the NAICS codes by typing in the NAICS code description as your keywords. And
okay,
it'll
that's a good idea.
do the same thing. I should also note, I don't know if you saw me do this earlier, but I should also note that in your search, you can search for all those words, any of those words, or an exact phrase match. All right, so that the Boolean logic helps. And you can also limit it by date. So if I go back to our medical device example, whoops, that's not what I meant to do, but that's okay, it'll suffice. I could say, well, give me all of those that are, let's say they're aged. Everything that was done before 2016, that means they're probably looking for an exit, as an example. So here's 110 private equity firms that have managed services, which is an IT kind of thing, that they purchased all of these 4+ years ago. Or you could look at it, who's done it just in 2020. So there you go.
Okay, very good. We're at the end, towards the end of our 40 minutes. We plan to do this. Any other content, Andy, that you'd like to share with us?
I don't think so. The only thing I would say is, look, we're here to help you. If you have any questions, we know the database really well. You can always just give us a call or shoot me an email. Happy to help. If you just need some brainstorming ideas on maybe better ways to search the database, we'll certainly reach out.
Very good. Any other questions? Looking at the chat box and don't see anything right now. Any last minute questions from anybody in attendance? Be happy to answer those. Well, if not, Andy, thank you very much. Very
Thanks
informative, very useful, and look forward. We use your product in our office quite a bit and get a lot of good use out of it. So thank you, Andy. And that'll be it for our call today. And thanks everybody for attending, and have a great rest of the day.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me.